as well. Looks like we are live. How's everybody doing this evening? It's good to see you. Man, I got a cool show put together for you. I'm really jacked about this. So, hey, thanks for joining. And you know what we're going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about top athletes and the steps that they follow to winning. And a lot of Olympic stuff, a lot of professional athlete stuff, which is really cool. And I'm going to share with you basically what you can learn from the best athletes in the world and apply their steps to your plan so that you can get on track to winning. I mean, how cool is that, right? So if you never met me before, I'm Sean Humphreys. I'm a high performance coach, founder of Elite Performance Systems, and I specialize in changing performance in individuals and teams. Whether you're a highly skilled athlete or wanting to be one, or just wanting to improve your performance, you're in the right place, all right? So if you don't mind, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Give me a little wow face or what have you. Show me a little love so I can see where you're coming from. Cool. All right. So, and also, hey, wherever you're watching from, let me know what city or what country you're tuning in and joining us on this broadcast. And also, too, is that this broadcast is going to be available on my YouTube channel for rebroadcast. And I love the questions that you guys ask, and I will go back on the rebroadcast and answer those questions for you. So, all right. So if I ask you to describe winning, and I ask you, said, okay, what does winning look like? Your answers might look like something like this: winning a game, or winning a tournament, or winning an actual match, or a track and field heat, or a swim meet, or even winning a championship. There's many ways in describing winning. And here's an interesting way to look at winning. At the Olympic level, the athlete's expectation of winning comes from an internal feeling the champion has concerning his or her performance. Okay, let me repeat that again. The expectation of winning from an Olympic athlete comes from an internal feeling that the champion has concerning his or her performance. Okay, he or she is in harmony with the idea that their expectation and performance are equal. It makes a lot of sense to me. He or she, their harmony, is they're in harmony with the idea that their expectation and performance are equal. Okay, I don't see that very often in amateur sports, youth sports. I see this at the ultra elite level, right? And I think that's something that just from the get-go that you can take home this evening is that when you go into performance, your expectations are purely based on how you are performing right there in that moment. And I think that is really critical to understand just on the get-go. Now, listen to this. Your scoring, okay, is a function of great execution, and winning is the result. Your scoring is a function of great execution. And that's not necessarily of executing the shot, that's executing everything. That's executing all the steps of performing. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And we've talked about that on previous lectures that I've done. And winning is a result of that. However, thinking about winning can pull your focus off proper execution in competition. I think we can all agree with that. Is that if you start focusing on winning or outcome, it's going to pull your focus off proper execution. in a competition. So thinking about your steps of performing, that's the answer, okay? That's the answer for the steps of having a chance to have a winning performance. Now, I've interviewed and I've talked with many world champions, and I've asked them, what are they thinking about while they're performing at their best? And interesting enough, most of them say they weren't thinking about anything. They were really thinking about nothing or very little when they won their event. And that usually happens when you have a world-class outcome, you have a personal best, and you're just kind of going through the motions. But this makes sense when you consider that when the conscious mind is quiet, okay, and the subconscious can do its best work. Okay, it's kind of easier said than done, but I'm going to touch a little bit on that tonight. But we need to perform consciously or subconsciously in big competitions. Bottom line, okay? When we think about winning while performing, we become outcome oriented instead of performance oriented, and normally over trying is the result. It's the kiss of death is over trying, and that's usually a product of overtraining. Okay, this is interesting. In golf, whether it's on the course or in training, you are in your conscious mind 97% of the time. Okay, now I'm not talking about. Let's remove world-class athletes here, okay? Because they've done the reps so many times, okay? And they do it subconsciously. That's something to aspire to. But the athletes that we're working with day in and day out right now, these youth athletes and college athletes and even the professional athletes. So what does that look like when you're in your conscious mind 97% of the time and only 3% of the time you're in the subconscious? So consciously, for example, consciously you walk up to the shot and you start building your strategy, because all the strategies are different, but you have a sequence that you follow that is defined and it's measured, that you have to consciously build that strategy, lie, yardage, conditions, and you do it every single time. So you're looking at the wind, you're looking at elevation, you're looking at the trees, you're looking at the water to see if there's riffles on the water and the wind's moving it. So consciously you're doing this, okay? You build the strategy. Now you consciously commit to the strategy, okay? Next is that you go what we call into the commitment phase. You consciously rehearse the shot that you're getting ready to execute. Okay? All right? Then you consciously run the mindset program that we teach our athletes. Okay? That's the next step. Here's the key, is that in running the mindset program, it has a point of initiation, a point of alignment, and a point of focus. As soon as the eyes come back to the ball, you have one last thought. It's your point of focus. That turns it over to the subconscious skill. You pull the trigger and you execute the shot. That's the 3% of the entire round of golf, of where it's turned over to your subconscious and you execute the shot. Now, as athletes get really good at this stuff, they can replicate it and duplicate it. Why? Because it's defined, it's measured, it's timed, and then they can subconsciously do it. But in many cases, so what happens when you get off? And where do you get off at? What happens? Is it the strategies? Is it the commitment phase? Is it or committing to the strategy? Is it the commitment phase? Is it the mindset program? Is it the reinforcement after you execute the shot? So I just wanted to share that with you, because really the athletes are consciously in their conscious mind 97% of the time, and they only turn it over to that 3% of the time subconsciously. But the ultra elite athletes are subconsciously doing it across the board. Okay, that's where we're striving to get, but we've got to go through this. I don't know how you want to describe it, but we have to go through these steps, right, to learn them so that we can replicate them and duplicate them. So here's another piece is that over trying has caused more good competitors to lose competitions than any other form of mental error. Over trying is, like I said, it's the kiss of death. And it's difficult not to think about winning the competition when you're in position to win, right? And if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. You can't hide from the score if you're performing well. And if you're near the lead, and if you're score sensitive, which, man, I haven't met too many athletes that are not score sensitive. And I'm going to touch on that. Someone is certainly going to remind you of your place and your score, okay? Coaches, if you're listening, athletes, if you're listening, parents, if you're listening, okay? I'll never ask a player what they made on a hole. I'll never ask them what score they made. I never ask them what they shot on the 9 holes. I never ask them what they shot on the 18 holes. I'll never tell them their score. Why? Because when you do this, you consciously shift to outcome. And then you start thinking of the outcome or the position or where I might finish. Rule of thumb. The second you start thinking outcome of the shot, performance drops. You start thinking outcome of the hole and what I'm going to make on the hole, performance starts to drop. You start thinking about what you make on the shoot on the front 9 or what you're going to shoot on the back 9, performance drops. You start thinking about what you're going to shoot for the whole day. You start adding up your golf course or adding up your score and saying, man, I'm 2 over par, and man, I just got to keep it here. How many times does it just gradually start creeping up? Rule of thumb, you parents, players, friends, coaches, it's a big benefit to all of us to keep to ourselves. And if score's that important, keep score yourself and don't tell anybody about it. Okay? This is what the ultra elite athletes do. They don't even know what the score is. They're just focused on the next steps. So sometimes, you want to win so badly, it becomes the most important thing to you in your life at that moment. Ask any finalist that's going into a final championship. They want it so bad that they can taste it, right? I mean, I think you agree, you guys won. There's no substitution for it. But the taste is bittersweet if wanting it too much keeps you from performing well enough to attain it. You can get so caught up in the outcome that you can become destructible. Friends tell us to go out, and parents tell us to go out, coaches tell us to go out and just enjoy the competition. Yeah, right. It's easy to say, but man, it's so hard, okay? But that's exactly what some people are doing, okay? And these are the ones that that you may have a hard time beating. Why? It's because they're working hard in training, okay, and easy in competition. They're working hard in training and easy in competition. And we talk about this all the time with the college coaches in our workshops and our lectures. So what does that look like? So if you want to have your competition to be easy, your training needs to have higher consequences than the competition. Your training on a daily basis needs to push you to be really uncomfortable. And the more that you get uncomfortable, the more that you will become comfortable at being uncomfortable. Let me say that again. The more that you train at getting uncomfortable, your self-image will become comfortable at being uncomfortable. And that's what we really push in EPS with our athletes, and that's where we train them and push them in that. So, but is there a proper time to think about winning? Right? Well, I mean, it really depends on your definition of winning, right? So first, there's many winners in big competition, okay? If you're in a certain class, there's class winners. There's professional. There's amateur winners. There's male winners. There's female winners. There's junior winners. There's senior winners. There's people that have been competing in the sport, they're veteran winners. And also there's team sport winners, okay? We just have to define what that winning piece is. However, there's only one overall winner, right, of the competition. And this position is every competitor's dream, right? That's what they wish to hold, right? So secondly, there are many ways to win other than finishing first on the leaderboard, okay? First, you've got to have winning performances in training. And it needs to be defined. It needs to be measured. It needs to be timed, okay? And one would argue that we win whenever we advance down the road to achievement, okay? We are advancing down the road to achievement in our training, okay? We win when we learn, and we learn more from our struggles. And let me tell you what, struggling is the best form of learning. I mean, when I was running my academy in Texas, I had a great relationship with the parents, and we had 150 kids in it, so we had a lot of parents. And I would have kids out, we trained 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and we had lights out. We trained till 10 o'clock at night. And so here's the interesting piece, is that from an athlete's standpoint, okay, when our athletes were really struggling, and it was a tough day, and it was really struggling, I'd get them together, and I would talk to them, and I'd say, look, I want to explain something to you. This was your best day. And they look at me like I have three heads. I said, yes, today was your best day. And they're like, how can that be? And I'm, look, you won't understand it now. And they're like, man, everything that we did that needed work, I mean, we just didn't do anything well at all. And I'm like, yeah. I said, because you were struggling. And struggling is the best form of learning. So peel that over to the parent side. I've had many conversations with parents over the years, and parents would ask, hey, Sean, man, our son, man, he's really struggling right now in his golf. And I would say, and they're like, no, you don't understand. He's like, he's really distraught about it, and he's really struggling. And I'm like, I know. I said, isn't it beautiful? Like they want to shoot me, right? But it is. It's parents don't like to see their kids struggle, okay? I mean, bottom line, we don't. But coaches, we do. Teachers, we do. We want to see them struggle because it's when they really have to dig deep to figure things out and push through it. So do not be concerned with struggling, okay? So should we be concerned at all about winning? Absolutely we should. Absolutely we should be. I mean, and the best focus, in what I've seen from the best athletes in the world, your focus needs to be on winning performances. Not finishing at the top, but winning performances. So what does that look like? Okay, so a second ago, I rinsed through a little bit of the performance steps, right? So here's something interesting is, and I've mentioned this before, and and I think it's really worth mentioning again, is that, when I got into teaching and training and coaching, I had no clue what performance was. And it took me a while to learn from these top coaches and athletes in the world, like the Bill Parcells and the Sean Paytons and the Mike Zimmers, and and then at the Olympic level, from the Olympic coaches like Coach Basham, and the Olympic gold medalists. So here's the thing: your job in training is to isolate and master the steps of performing well. That's your job in training. Okay? Those steps have to be defined, they have to be measured, and they have to be timed. Why? So that you can replicate and duplicate them. And I'm not talking about executing a golf shot. I'm talking about the steps in performing. So for example, we have what are called 6 steps in performing. Okay? The anticipation phase, where they build a strategy, right? That's number 1. Okay? They build a strategy, it has steps that you follow. They're defined, they're measured in time. Number 2 is the commitment to that strategy. That's the next step in performing. Okay? You have to perform and build a strategy first, which is 1. Once you go through those steps, now you go through the steps of committing to that strategy. That's step 2 in performing. Then number 3, you go through the commitment phase. That's defined, measured, and timed. It has steps that you follow. Then the next is the mindset program. Okay? That's number 4. The mindset program is broken down into 3 steps. Okay? Then the execution of the shot, which is number 5. And then number 6, which is called the reinforcement phase, where we reload all the information and we put the solutions in place. That's the performance steps. That's what the ultra elite athletes in the world, they follow these types of steps every single time. It may not be these steps, but these steps came from the Olympic training. And for me, if it works at the Olympic level, it works anywhere. And if it's not taught and trained and coached at the Olympic level, honestly, I don't even do it. Because if it works at the Olympic level, it works anywhere. So, yeah, winning is important, but you have to have winning performances in running these steps. And when you get really good at running these steps, you start performing really well in your training. Again, your job in training is to isolate and master the steps of performing well. Your job in competition is to execute these steps of performing. That's it. That's why you hear a lot of athletes, they'll talk about, well, it's the process. We're focused on the process. And I think the process gets a little diluted sometimes and it gets, misused. Not at that level, but what's the process? I like to use them as, hey, these are the steps of performing. That's what they're talking about. The process is their steps of performing. And they have to be defined, it's got to be measured, and it's got to be timed. So when it comes to winning performances, and it's coming to the day of competition, I suggest that you also goal set, okay, to have a winning performance on the day of your competition, instead of goal setting to win an event. Now, I'll repeat that. And we do this. I suggest that you goal set to have a winning performance on the day of your competition instead of the goal of setting to win the event. I can tell you this right now. I've been around a lot of professional athletes, a lot of Olympic champions, a lot of great coaches. Yeah, deep down, the goal is to win the game. But if we're focused on winning the game, where do we lose focus? It shifts from the steps of performing to thinking about winning. You're not ever thinking about winning the game. It's the next steps, okay? So if our goal is to set our goal to have a winning performance on the day of competition, instead of goal setting to win an event, what's the difference? Well, if you goal set to have a winning performance, okay? If you goal set to have a winning performance, You will always be process or steps oriented and not outcome oriented. If you set to have a winning performance, you're always going to be focused on your steps of the process or the steps of performing, what we like to call them, and not outcome oriented. Okay? So it's huge. So with this mental system of steps of performing, you'll be much less likely to overtry in competition because you're always focused on the next steps and not counting your score. That's why it's so important to have these steps defined in your training so that you're running these steps all the time, so it gives you an opportunity to have a winning performance in your training. So I'll give you another reason to focus on a winning performance instead of winning the event. The player with the best performance in a tournament doesn't always win the event. And that's a fact. I mean, we see it all the time with athletes that, a lot of times that they just played better than everybody else. They might have a good round in there, but they just played better than everybody else, okay? There's time to think about winning. And here's the key, okay? The time that you think about winning is when you are in training. That's when you think about winning. And you want to focus on having a winning performance in your training. Why? Because your self-image needs to believe that it's like you to win. Okay? Our Olympic training model that we use is built to design to grow and protect your self-image, and we follow the steps of field, shot, round, and competition, and we do that religiously in our training because it keeps us from focusing on outcome. Okay? And it grows and protects our self-image so it becomes like us to do it. So if you're not really familiar with the self-image is your sum of your habits and your attitudes. It's your area of comfort that you like to operate in. And if it's not like you to do something in competition, it's usually a product of your self-image in many cases. Okay? So if it's not like you to do it in competition, then you have to train like it's you to do something that you've never done before. That's why we bring it to the training piece. And so your focus on winning needs to be in training, not at the event. Okay? And remember why I said just a few minutes ago, I said the key is in your training, it needs to have higher consequences, right? It needs to have higher consequences than the competition. Well, if you do that, it requires for you to really get after your training. It makes it difficult. You struggle. You get used to having that pressure, that tension, that anxiety, that stress in your training. And then what happens when you move from training to competition? It feels light. Feels good. That's what we want. Like these Olympians, they've been training for all these years, all these training, the time trials, world championships. They can't wait to get to that event at the Olympics. Why? So they can just go show off what they've been doing. They have won that gold medal, and they have rehearsed that winning of that gold medal so many times in their training, it's become like them to do it. That's why this training is so powerful. One way to enhance this attitude, which is the self-image, is to picture that you're having a winning performance every time you train. Picture yourself that you're having a winning performance every time you train. Your self-image imprints that it's like me to win and adds to the likelihood that winning will fall within your comfort zone in an upcoming competition. That's what you want it to do. You want the winning to fall within your comfort zone at the upcoming competition so that you have a winning performance. So remember when we talked about it in the very beginning, is that it's important to understand, okay, what are my expectations, okay, based around how I'm performing. And if we're growing this in training, it's going to be a lot easier to compete at a higher level because we're managing these expectations and we're managing that harmony works together of performing and expectations. Man, you can see it. You can see the results. It's amazing. So again, your self-image will imprint. It's like you to win, and it adds to the likelihood of that you'll fall into that category in upcoming competition or that comfort zone. Okay, so think about winning and keep your conscious mind on what? The steps of performing, right? You can think about winning in competition, in training, but your conscious mind is on the steps of performing in the big event. Okay? That's all you're focused on is the steps. What's the next steps? What's the lie? What's the strategy? The commitment to the strategy, the commitment phase, running my mindset program, executing the shot, then reinforcing and reloading afterward. So, but by the way, thinking about losing, right? Not that, this is a topic, but thinking about losing while competing, it works every time too. Every time you think about losing, trust me, it works. And if you can define it and you can measure it, okay, and you can time it, you can duplicate it. And that's why I spent all these years building the system of EPS, 17 years in the making. Everything is defined, it's measured, and it's timed, and it allows the athletes to duplicate and replicate these on a regular basis in their training so that they can do it in competition. Not only from a think piece, but also a training piece and a reinforcement piece that changes their performance. If you can duplicate it, okay, you can achieve mindset mastery and you can have mindset consistency if you can duplicate it, okay? If you have consistency in your mindset, you can win. Bottom line, you see it every day, okay? I mean, it's interesting to me, sports psychology attempts to help athletes through applications originating from study of psychology and research conducted by educators. You can check out any bookstore and you'll find racks full of volumes designed to get motivated, to gain influence, to have a better attitude, to increase your sales of expertise or whatever it is. While these books have dramatically increased the need, for performance, to do something about the mental game, they've only begun to tell them what to do, right? And I've read them, and there's some great books out there. There really is. But the challenge behind it is they tell you what to do, as opposed to telling you, teaching you, training, and coaching you how to do it. And that's what I learned at the Olympic level, is this is how these athletes do it. I mean, that's exactly what Elite Performance Systems focuses on, and the information that we provide through our workshops, training camps, college onboarding program, which is one of the only NCAA onboarding programs in sports, and our coaching conferences that we host for all our coaches that come in around the world. I've devoted my life to giving the mental game definition and have grinded it with the best Olympians and Olympic coaches in the world. And if you can define something, you can duplicate it. And if you can duplicate it, you can achieve mindset consistency. And if you have a consistent mindset, you can win. I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast this evening as much as I've enjoyed putting it together for you. I get so jacked about this stuff. You can join me here every Wednesday, 8 Central, 9 p.m., 8 Central, 9 Eastern. if you know someone that could benefit from this broadcast, man, pass it along. Send it over to them. Also, it's going to be available on my YouTube channel. Hey, and also if you're interested in being a part of our private client group, or if you're a high school student or you know a high school student that is seriously interested in playing collegiate golf, our college onboarding program is unbelievable. The results that are getting are absolutely crazy. But more importantly, we are offering our college onboarding training camps in South Florida. And they're on my website at SeanHumphreys.com. Just click on the training and you can see all the dates from February all the way up through May. And they're 2-day training programs. I've got college coaches that come in and help out with these. And we just finished one last week, and man, it was unbelievable. And I'm headed out tomorrow, and we've got 3 more camps that are starting. So check it out. If you'd like to have a discovery call, man, I'd love to chat with you about your game, or about maybe it's your son or your daughter's game. You can reach out to me at Sean@SeanHumphreys.com. That's my email address, Sean@SeanHumphreys.com. Or, hey, here's my direct line. You give me a shout on my direct line. It's 972-793-7255. And if you really want to get a taste of what this Olympic training is all about, then you can kickstart it with these college training camps, these 2-day camps. All of them are on the weekends. They're Saturday and Sundays, so they're easy to get there. All right, listen, thanks for joining me. Again, I'm Sean Humphreys, founder of Elite Performance Systems, and I will see you next Wednesday.